Okay, so I'm going to get going. I'm expecting a few people to join anyway. We are recording this. We're going to publish it on our YouTube channel. So if you've missed the start, you'll be able to get it. I wanted to kick off like very quickly with, some just thoughts on like why do we create a snap strategy? And can you see this okay? Can you see my second slide? Why have a strategy? Great. This is my first time using Butter, so it might not be as smooth as before. So first of all, why do you have a strategy like in the first place? And I think there are a few reasons here. Firstly, often when I see companies, they complain about being a feature factory. They complain about just like shipping outputs and not thinking about the impact. It's because there's no strategy in place. So a strategy helps you focus on the results. Secondly, it helps you work on mutually reinforcing ideas. So rather than just think about all the possible things you could build and working on things that independently seem high impact, it helps you pick things that when put together, you get a sort of 1 + 1 = 3 effect, where if you focus on a particular part of your user journey or a particular value proposition and benefit, you get these compounding effects. Third reason is like everyone, I guess, knows as a PM, you've continually got stakeholders asking you for things. And when you've got a clear strategy, it just helps you say no, helps you sort of like push those things and say like, you know what, this doesn't align with our strategy. Let's do what we said we do. And finally, it helps you increase your alignment and morale. So people feel better when there's a plan and that plan makes sense and they feel good about it. So with that said, like why have a snap strategy? Well, yeah, a snap strategy is something you can come up with in an hour or two. It's usually just a set of notes effectively, but there are really good reasons for doing this. So it just gets you going. It kind of defeats that tyranny of the blank page and gets you into motion. Secondly, it really helps you kind of marshal your own thinking and plan your next steps. So as you sketch out what your strategy might look like on a single sheet of paper or a couple of sheets of paper, then you're going to realize like where are the gaps, where are the big assumptions, and that's going to help you think about where you need to focus your discovery. Having even some basic notes also gives something for other people to give feedback on. And so even if you're new to a company, you don't understand much of the context, by putting down what you do know, you're going to have something which you can take to people and say like, hey, this is how I understand things. What am I missing? What else should be in there? And it's going to give you more feedback. And finally, like often your strategy is going to be like way better than you think. Like even when you don't know that much, like a lot of your broad brushstrokes will probably be right. And so it's a case of kind of course correcting from where you are. So in this session, we're going to run through these 7 steps, which are the same 7 steps I use if I'm creating a snap strategy, if I'm creating a full-blown product strategy, and they help me come up with just a fairly coherent plan of what I want to do. So firstly, in there, you've got, coming up with a mission, like what is the change you want to see in the world? Then you're looking at your users, who are you building for? What do they need? Superpowers, so what can your company do that no one else can do? The vision, what is the future you're building towards? The pillars, these are the work streams, the kind of most important themes of work. They're going to help you deliver on that vision. Impact, so that's a check. It says like, hey, if we go and build these pillars, is that going to deliver on our vision? Is that going to deliver the results that we want? And the roadmap, which is, what are the things we're going to build? And that's not kind of a list of commitments. That's really just checking that you've got enough detail there. You've got some ideas of what you're going to do. So in this session today, we're going to run through each of these 7 steps. It's going to be very tight timings, so I will check the chat when I can, but I'm not going to be able to answer every question. I will stay on at the end if you want to ask questions, if Bada doesn't kick us out. So this is roughly the format. We're going to have 2 minutes of me explaining like each step in a little more detail. 3 minutes. This is for everyone. This is for all of you on the call. Write down some thoughts, and then I'll get 1 or 2 of you just to share what you've got. We'll have a very quick discussion, and we'll move on. Yes, there will be a recording, and I'm hoping some of you have already put in the chat some ideas for a product because I will try and do this live to give you an idea that this can be done. The slides, yeah, I can share these. The slides, I have to admit, are not super exciting. If you go to the Hustle Badger website, there's a full free course on this, which will give you a lot more detail. So I'd recommend that, but I will make sure that the slides are also linked in the recording. So just opening up the chat here, and anyone get any ideas for a product you'd like to see me do this for? Tinder, great. I will take Tinder. So let's move on then. So if you haven't used Butter before, you'll probably notice somewhere you've got a little timer, and that's the agenda. You should now see it says like an objective, and that will have some of the notes of what we're doing, as well as the slides that I'm going to run through. So hopefully that's just really clear to cover. So the objective here, like this is kind of setting the definition of like, what do you want your strategy to achieve? Like, what is the challenge you're faced with? Without a goal, there is no strategy. There's no kind of, you can't get better at going, in any direction. So an objective, I usually like to define it with a mission, that's an inspiring statement, and a measure, that's a hard metric that gauges like whether you've made progress. So there's an example there. Throughout this, I'm using a kind of naive view of Airbnb or a similar travel booking site. So that's kind of what I imagine, something along those lines you might come up with if you were there. I'm going to give you now 3 minutes to come up with your own thoughts. I'm going to see what I can come up with for Tinder, and then we'll have a quick chat about what that looks like. If you found that really easy, if you have ideas, then put something in the queue. Yeah. Can you comment? Wait, can you kind of, I see a little hand up there. Oh, great. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is to do this for your own product. Because I'm loving how people have done this for Tinder, very similar to what I've come up with. But well, do it for whatever you want. If you want to do it for Tinder, do it for Tinder. Don't let me tell you what to do. If you want to do it for your own product, do it for your own product. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. So David, you've put connect singles to create lifelong matches, and your measure is increase the number of in-person dates from X to Y. Yeah, which I like, but is it really about lifelong matches? And I think you're right. It's like the number of in-person dates, but I don't know how they'd measure that. Victor, to create a simple, authentic dating experience that focuses on genuine connections. Already getting some critique there from Kent on how genuine they're expecting. So I'm going to post mine in as well. So I very simply said their mission was to help people get laid, and the metrics. I thought maybe there would be some kind of like active conversation. So maybe you'd have 3+ messages from each person. I mean, your snap strategy, you can say it how it is, right? Maybe you want to polish it up, make it a little bit more kind of professional for when you're going to show it to other people. I'm on the spot here, right? Question from Janet: if you're starting with a brand new initiative product, how do you come up with a measure when you don't have a working user base? Yeah, great question. I think it's really difficult setting 0 to 1 targets. Something you could do is think about what number would make you really happy, would make your stakeholders really happy, and set that. If you really don't have any benchmarks, I mean, I think the sort of thing is, can you set you want to avoid the situation where like 3 months down the line you're like, oh well, we've got 5 users and next week it'll probably be 6, and you're like, wait a sec, we need like 1,000 users or 10,000 users for this to really work. Great. I'm going to move on to the next section then. So that is going to be users. So users, once you've got your objective, okay, you know the direction you're heading, then the next thing to do is think about who are you building for? Like, what do they want or need? And for your snap strategy, I wouldn't get kind of too kind of caught up in this. This is like, who are we? I think about your audience, like who are we trying to target? Who's going to use our service? And the use cases, and then what are their needs? What do they want? And so the use cases, you usually start those saying, I want to ... XYZ, or I need to XYZ. And this is something you could fill out with, if you're into jobs to be done or customer journey mapping, this is something that also you could think about. So question from Dr. Dang: is this an ideal company profile or personas in a B2B context? Yeah, so in a B2B context, you're looking at your ICP, your ideal customer profile. Your personas are then a level down because you'll have the buyer and the user and legal and compliance and a bunch of other people. So I would just think about like overall, what are the types of customers that you're trying to appeal to, and what is the value prop that you're offering those ICPs. So again, I'm going to have a go at this for Tinder, and please do, keep dropping questions in. I will answer them as best possible. Okay, so question from Sam H. Within an audience, is it worth calling out if you serve multiple, have slightly different use cases? Yeah, so maybe a marketplace is a good example here. So if you are serving both the the guests and the hosts for Airbnb, then would you put both of these on there? Yes, you would do. Like it depends if you're thinking about the whole product. Like, are you a VP of product and you've got to think about everyone, or are you on one team that is dealing with maybe is only dealing with part of the product that is focused on a specific user group? So when I worked at Depop, then we had specific teams for buyers and for sellers, and so those were separated, and each team only had to think about one of those. But we also had teams like payments, which had to think about both sides of the marketplace. So it depends a little bit on your context there. But yeah, if you've got multiple kind of major segments like that, then you do want to think about them. Okay. David, again, quick in. So you're saying we're targeting college students, meet other students they couldn't meet in real life, and singles to a new area. And their use cases are increase speed to get laid without networking, yeah, and get over past relationship. Yeah. So I had for Tinder, I had this. I put it a bit broader. I said so I got that twice. Anyway, I said users were just single people. I think you're right about the kind of, you could probably focus it down. The college students is probably like a really good sweet spot for Tinder. Use cases, I had things like, yeah, I want to find nice people today. I think there's a safety aspect in there. I think there's a fun look. Yeah, I mean, like, do you put an age range on Tinder? I mean, I don't know. And I included, there's something around like people who are dating online. You know, they want to look good. They want to feel confident about the image they're putting out there as well. I think there's something about confidence as well. Let's give it like a few more seconds if anyone else has got any other examples from a different company they want to run through. Okay, let's crack on then, because I'm sure there will be questions further on. So superpowers, this one, a little bit more tricky. So this is effectively, what is your competitive moat? What can you do better than anyone else? Or what are the unique benefits that you offer? This is really important at the company level. It's slightly less important if you're working on an individual product team, but it's also worth bearing in mind. Like, companies overall really need to think about the unique benefits that they offer and their competitive moat, because if you don't have that, you're going to end up with a product that has lots of direct competition. When you have lots of direct competition, you end up competing on marketing budget and on price. And both of those things erode your margin. So you're going to end up in a very low margin business, which is hard to make money out of. Okay. When you have a unique benefit that other people can't easily provide, then you can price high and you end up in a high margin business. So how do you kind of think about that? I really like the 7 powers framework. 7 powers kind of listed out here. These are different ways that you can create that competitive moat. So network effects, this is like the kind of classic, Facebook, Instagram, every user enjoys more value as new users join the network. So the bigger your network is, the more value there is, and small networks can't compete. Scale economies. So this is your unit costs decline as volume increases. Great example of this is, say, Amazon with its next day delivery. It has a whole, logistics, supply chain, warehousing that other people just cannot compete with because they don't have the volume to have all the warehouses and trucks. Switching costs. This is when it's really difficult to switch to different products because they're very well integrated into a company's workflow. So this is very common in B2B, something like SAP or Salesforce. People are like, oh, why'd you buy SAP? It's like, well, it's been in the business for 20 years. It's really difficult to migrate off it. So it's going to stay there. If they put up their prices, a lot of companies are just going to eat that price increase. Counter positioning is where you offer either a business model or a value proposition that other players can't offer for some reason. So if Airbnb is offering the broadest selection of properties on the market, you see other players who are offering like only premium properties. And that's something that the Airbnb finds it very difficult to compete with effectively. They've got their super hosts and whatever else, but effectively they want to have the broadest range. That's their value proposition. And so to compete against people who are offering a curated selection of premium properties is going to damage Airbnb's value proposition. So that's counter positioning. Corner resort, this is where you've got unique access to a valuable asset. So that could be you've just spent ages developing proprietary algorithms. It could be that you have access to the only kind of gold mine in South Africa. It's kind of quite often used in those kind of physical goods ways. Branding is then you've got kind of an identical offering, but because over time you've really developed a strong brand, people are willing to pay more for that product than they would do from a no-name brand. So you could say Apple, Tesla, these kinds of products, like they generate a premium because people are like, well, I trust Apple, I like Apple, I will buy their headphones, I will buy their phone, even if on a like-for-like basis, there are alternatives out there at a lower price. And process power is when your embedded company and culture, allow you lower cost or superior quality. This is very tempting to go for. I think I would not assume this. This should be almost like your last resort because most companies do not have this. This is the kind of classic like Toyota. We have a completely different manufacturing system that other car manufacturers cannot replicate. If you are, say, Deliveroo, where there's a lot of process, there's a lot of operations, feels very difficult to copy, Uber Eats, Deliveroo, because of the managing the riders and the restaurants and the customers all on a tight time frame. Yeah, it's not as sustainable as you think it would be because you look how many competitors there are. I'm just going to put audio settings. Could everyone just go on mute if you're not already, just because we've got a few other things going in the background. Okay, so on that basis, what's an example of this? So this is the example for the Airbnb. We'll do a quick one here. I will spend a minute or two coming up with some superpowers for Tinder. And have a go yourselves, either for Tinder, for your own product, and drop them into the chat. I realize it might be easier if I leave it on this one. Just know this, like the idea is not to kind of think of reasons why every single one of these superpowers applies. It's to sense check like which of these, like it could just be one or two, you're going to use as a sustainable competitive advantage. Yeah, so Janet, it sounds like you're talking about you have students who don't buy the content, but lecturers tell them what they need to go and buy. So you might consider that a cornered resource, effectively. Like if you captured the lecturers and who they recommend, then that's very difficult for people to get in. I think the other thing is if you can think of something that's clearly a superpower, but you're not sure which of these buckets to put it in, like don't worry about that too much. Like the value is not in kind of being like, oh, this is a branding thing or this is a scale thing. The value is just recognizing that where does your competitive advantage come from, and how do you maximize it and not let it erode. Okay, for Tinder, I'm going to put mine in the chat again. So a couple of things here for me. So I think Tinder has a network effect. This is like a local network effect, so it only really works on a city by city basis. But the more people you have on the platform, then the more selection you have to go on dates and so on. There's that kind of classic, social media type network effect there. And then branding, I think Tinder's kind of broken through to the mainstream in a way that few other dating sites have. And that means they just get written up more. People will probably like check out Tinder before they check out other dating sites. And we've got a question from Laura. How could you use the same structure to create a snap strategy for a portfolio, e.g. a data vertical made up of data products courses? Or that, yeah, okay. What do you recommend a different approach? I think the question is like, what's your objective for the portfolio? Because I think this is if you've got an objective for the portfolio, then you can think about like how do you structure the portfolio to deliver that objective. You might not use exactly the same format as this, but that's kind of the principles. Or you might say, like, hey, actually, like it's just a portfolio. We just want like broad risk. And then for each of the products inside of it, you have an individual strategy. So I think the question is, yeah, that's how I think about it. Right, I'm going to move on to the next one, just conscious of time here. So vision. So on the vision side, okay, there we go. So the vision is this question of what does the future look like? Like, what are you building towards? And if you're doing a snap strategy, this is going to be a short paragraph. It's going to be, a few bullet points with some key elements. Here you're thinking, for a whole company, you're probably thinking 3 to 5 years ahead. If you're working in a team as part of a bigger company, you might be thinking anywhere from 6 months to 2 years ahead. But this is the sort of, what does this future look like? And in time, you might convert this from a list of bullet points into something a bit more visual. So you might convert it into a storyboard or a clickable prototype. But in a snap strategy, I think just getting some thoughts down on paper is a really good way to get started. So again, I'm gonna have a quick go at this on Tinder, and any other questions, just keep dropping them into the chat. Okay, anyone got any Any thoughts on this vision? Or still thinking? Yeah, so Jack asking if using an Airbnb example or a marketplace example, would you have a vision for hosts and for guests? Would you have a vision for each side um, of the marketplace? Um, yeah, I ideally would. Yes, I think sometimes you can just focus on one side of the marketplace and use that to drive the features and the things that you need to build on the other side. But ideally, you want to define it on both sides because your vision is really like a very high level, long-term prototype, almost, or concept. So you want to be able to break that down into shorter time frames, more tangible things that go from your vision, which is 5 years out, to a 1 year. This is a clickable prototype of some stuff we're hoping to build, to a kind of quarter, or 6 weeks. Like, this is the actual feature we're going to build in the next few weeks, and this is how it actually works. So as you reduce the time scale, your fidelity goes up, and it just gives you a really good idea of what you're building. So you ideally you'd have that for everywhere that you're going to build things. Like, sometimes it doesn't make as much sense, so it's not as much value. But having something visual or emotional is really powerful. It kind of like motivates people and aligns them on what you're building. Okay, so for Tinder, what I've got for my vision is this. Let me just. So I've thought about this, and this is a really kind of helpful way, definitely in B2C, is to think about a customer journey or a storyboard. So my vision for Tinder is that you download the app, and within 30 seconds, you can have a great looking profile. And immediately your profile's complete. You get, shown profiles of, hot, interesting people that you want to speak to. And then from there, connecting with them and starting a conversation happens really naturally. You never get ghosted. You never get kind of nasty messages. And actually the conversation moves off Tinder to WhatsApp or into real life meetups, like seamlessly as well. So I'm not describing sort of the features we're going to build there or the kind of themes of work. What I'm just describing is almost like, how would this feel like for the user if this is going to be like a great experience for them? Um, Dr. Dang, any Airbnb example? Shouldn't we focus on the buyers and not the partners? So should we focus on the people paying? I think it's a good question. Like, different marketplaces tend to emphasize either the supply or the demand side, and that depends on the industry dynamics and so on. And some of them focus a little bit on both. So I don't think there's a general rule for that. I think that's something to think about. What is more important for you in your business? Alejandro, I know that most of the times building there is not a sequential path and there are a lot of back and forth, but I'm wondering your thoughts why you didn't start with a vision step before the mission and North Star metric. Yeah, again, like, some people will prefer to start with the vision and then come up with the objective. Some people prefer to do it this way. It doesn't matter too much. And again, if you find it easier to start with the vision, great. Start with the vision and do it that way. I always put the objective first because, I like this kind of quote from Alice in Wonderland, where Alice is wandering through the forest. She meets the Cheshire Cat, and she says, "Which way should I go?" And the Cheshire Cat says, "Well, where are you trying to get to?" And Alice says, "Well, I don't mind." And Cheshire Cat says, "Well, it doesn't matter which way you go then." Like, for me, if you don't have an objective, there is no strategy because you don't know where you're trying to get to. You have to decide the direction you want to go in, and then you can work out what is the difference. So what's the difference between the objective and the vision? Yeah, they are similar. So the objective is, I think about this of kind of the tangible goal you are trying to get to. The vision is for me, it makes more sense as it becomes like more visual. So I often think of the vision as like it's the storyboard, it's the prototype, it's the video that you're going to show to the all hands or to your top customers to get them really excited about the direction the product's going in. The objective is going to be like your OKRs effectively saying like, hey, this is what we're going to build in the next 6 months. So when you're doing a snap strategy, both of those things are going to be like bullet pointy. So they're going to feel quite similar. But as you flesh it out into a more fully fledged strategy, it's going to make more sense. Okay, pillars. So these are also, again, might feel a little bit similar. So pillars is then like you're saying, okay, I've got my vision, I've got my objectives. So I know the direction I'm heading in right now. I know I'm going to try to get to in 3 to 5 years, maybe. The pillars, again, if the vision is going to be visual, ultimately, the pillars are really kind of the themes of work that you're going to have. So what are the work streams you're going to have? And this could be thought of as like, what is the gap between where you are now and the vision you've got? And what is the work you need to do to deliver on that? So if the vision describes the whole customer journey, the pillars are going to be where the biggest gaps are, or where the gaps are that you want to focus on right now on closing those. Again, I'm going to have a quick go. You've got an example there for an Airbnb type of company. I'm going to have a quick go at Tinder right now. If I'm not being clear enough about the difference between these different steps, objectives, vision, pillars, please do drop more questions into the chat. Okay, great. So David's got a suggestion here for what this would look like for Tinder. So he suggested that pillars might be improved matchmaking based on looks traits, remove bots, frequent ghosts, previously flagged individuals, and guided transition to regular messaging channels. I think these are great. And actually, post my things in here, I put very similar things. So safety, prevent bad behavior, put great conversations, which could be the positive side of that, I guess. And growth might be like get more people on to be active. So in your pillars, you can think about this from a purely customer point of view, like how do I make the customer experience better? There may be also things you just need to do from a business imperative, as in like, we just need to grow the number of users. That isn't going to help any individual user, but it's going to help the business. Or you might say, we really need to focus on our business model or on pricing. Again, that's not going to help our users, but it's definitely going to help the company. So I think this idea of thinking about what is the customer journey now and where do you want it to be in your vision and looking at the gaps is a good way to get started. But don't forget that you can have purely kind of business focused, business useful pillars as well. If the mission corresponds to a North Star, do these correspond to the input metrics? Yes. So yeah, often I would lay this out as a tree. So you might even use, an opportunity solution tree or something like that. If you do that, your kind of top branch that everything feeds into, that's going to be your objective. And then below that, your pillars, you could describe each of these with both a description and a metric, a driver metric of your headline one. It's not something I've got a slide to hand on, But again, if you go to Hustle Badger, if you look up our course on creating a snap strategy or a strategy course, you'll find that sort of thing fairly easily. Okay, so you've got your pillars. I'd say quick thoughts on this, like, again, these are work streams, these are themes of work, these are your opportunities in your opportunity solution tree. So you don't want to tie yourself to individual features at this point. You think about this more as like, these are the problems that we want to solve, or these are the opportunities that we're going to go after. And then you can give a bit more flexibility to what that actually looks like. I'm going to keep this moving though, just make sure we have time to finish. So next example here is impact. So impact, again, it's another one of these check steps. And this is basically where you say, okay, if we go and focus on these pillars, if we solve these problems, or if we address these opportunities, is that actually going to deliver us the results that we want? Is this going to give us the the results that we're looking for? So again, as you work this up into a proper strategy, you're going to go from a very qualitative description of how you deliver impact into actually maybe having a driver tree and identifying which metrics you're going to move and how those affect your North Star. And maybe even estimating like how much you can move each of those things. But for a snap strategy, I think the important thing is just to think through that qualitative description. So like, hey, if we do this, we'll get this result. Because what it will do is it just acts as a sense check that you are not kind of working on pillars or on work streams that everyone's been talking about for a long time, but don't actually link back to the objectives that you've got. Okay, I'm gonna have a quick go at this. You have a quick go too. If you get something, stick it in the chat and I will give you some feedback. You might just do this for, in this session, do it for one of the pillars that you've got. Just think about how any one of your pillars like drives that that mission, that objective that you've got. Does each pillar have to have its impact associated, or can you explain how it contributes to one metric? Yeah, so each pillar I would think about having its own sort of chain of logic, its own kind of what we're calling impact here, its own description of how it's going to drive impact, in the same way that within each pillar you're going to have a list of solutions, probably a list of features, and each of those you're going to want to talk about like what are the metrics they're driving, how they are driving impact overall. Could I clarify leading and lagging metrics? Is that per pillar? So in this context, I would think about your overall objective. So what we covered in the first step, that is your lagging metric, as in the sense of that's a big metric. It's going to be very difficult to influence on your own. What you're going to do with your impact here is for each pillar, think about how that pillar drives leading metrics that then drive the lagging metric in turn. So I'm going to put my Tinder example in the chat here. So my example, I've just chosen safety for the sake of time. And the mechanism here I've got is, if we go and build safety features, then that means we're going to remove bad actors proactively. They're going to interact with fewer kind of good users. There's going to be fewer bad interactions overall on the app. That's going to give us a higher NPS. When people like the app and we've got high NPS, we'll get better word of mouth, we'll get more users, we'll get more engagement from our existing users, more conversations. And that is our kind of good conversations was our high level metric that we wanted to drive. So we could say, like, for this particular pillar, our leading metric might be number of bad actors or number of kind of abuse reports that we get. If we drive that down, we'd expect there to be a knock-on effect that our number of good conversations went up. Please could everyone go on mute if you're not, just getting a bit of interference here from some people. Thank you. I think that's Rinky. If you're in the car, if you go on mute, that'd be great. Okay. Going to go on the final step here. Okay. So final step is the roadmap. So you've done your sense check now, you've got your pillars, you've been like, okay, these are the work streams. We've checked they are actually going to deliver impact, and we can continue to kind of refine those estimates, as I said. Final thing then that I find really helpful is to think through your roadmap. And this is effectively like, what would we build? Like, what are the obvious things that we might build in this point? These are not commitments. This is not you kind of saying like, we are definitely going to go and build this thing. This is you kind of giving a bit of color that when people say like, okay, safety, but we've talked about safety a lot at Tinder. What does that actually mean? You can say, well, here are 3 things that are kind of potential things that we could go and build, right? Again, if you don't know what the features are here, if you're saying like, hey, we should build some safety features, but actually we've got no idea what these might be, that's a really good indicator that you just need to do more discovery in this space. So it's not a kind of blocker. It's just saying like, oh, not actually sure what that, what we mean by tackling this problem. This is an area we need to do more discovery to make sure that there are some credible things that we can build to make this work. So question from Dr. Dan, would safety be your North Star metric? Yeah, in this example, I said that I call it live conversations was my North Star metric. So that's a number of conversations where both parties had at least 3 messages. So that's my North Star. And then for safety, the metric related with that pillar might be just the number of abuse reports that we get or number of reported conversations that we get. And you want to drive that one down. Okay. I'm going to have a quick go at roadmap then. Again, for the example, I'll probably just focus on one of the pillars. Obviously, you have a bit more time, you kind of go through each of the pillars, you try to come up with a few ideas. Again, the idea is not to kind of plan out your whole quarter, your whole year at this point. It's just to give a bit of color so that when you talk to people about what they think about here, you've got something down on the page. And that's really useful because if there are things that stakeholders really want, they will tell you, and that will get them onto your radar like very quickly. And then you can decide whether they're actually like good ideas, if they're actually going to make a difference. Okay. And David's asking, are these features effectively solutions solving each pillar? Yes, exactly. That's what you're putting in here. Wouldn't you want engineering to come up with this? That really depends on the product that you're building. If you're building something very technical, where you're saying like one of our pillars is like make this API more performant or make the platform more resilient, yeah, you might have a very difficult time coming up with that if you don't have an engineering background. But in most products where the product manager is sort of thinking through what are the needs of the user and how do we solve those, then the product manager would have a big say in this. And it's not purely up to you, right? You're going to talk with stakeholders, designers, engineers. This is a cross-functional, like the whole thing is a cross-functional collaboration. Again, you're just trying to get some ideas down to get the conversation going. Okay, so for the roadmap, I'm just going to post my ideas in the chat. So again, I've just focused on the safety pillar that we've been talking through. And my example ideas, maybe there's some kind of algorithm to detect bad actors, very early before they get reported. Maybe you've got some kind of reputation score or badge for, that should be good actors, not god actors. Maybe this is similar to the superhost kind of example in Airbnb, where people who behave really well on the platform get a little boost in terms of visibility, and that's worth having. Easy reporting, very easy to report people who behave badly, and maybe you've got some kind of help center or in-app tutorials for kind of safety, online dating, etiquette, that sort of thing. Again, these don't have to be the real things that you go after. This is just get a stake in the ground, help you get your thinking going, and open up a conversation when you have it with other people. Right, I think we are getting close to the end of our time on Butter. So I'm gonna go through to the last stage here, just the wrap up, the follow up. Just to say that those are the 7 steps to quickly run through. So again, like it's very, very high level, but you can do it in an hour, or give yourself like a couple of hours just to run through it, get something on paper, and then you'll have something you can go and share with other people, or you'll have something you can just reflect on and be like, I'm really not sure about this step or these bits. Let me go and do some more thinking specifically here. So let me go and do some more research, look at some references, speak to some other people in the organization. I'll come up with some better ideas here. If you like what how this process has gone, what you've seen here, then do check out Hustle Badger. There is a free course. The Intro to Strategy course will take you through this process in your own time. There is a template there you can use. The template is basically a standalone artifact that has all the instructions, has all the examples. You can just work your way through, has a bit more detail on each of these steps. And of course, we have a kind of a full-blown course that's kind of like multi-week course if you really want to go into detail. But also, if you don't like courses, it's not the right for you. We've got articles there that cover the same kind of information. We've got a weekly newsletter you can sign up to. There will be a recording, which I'll post on our YouTube channel, and I'll then post back onto LinkedIn as well as soon as I've got it. I see 50 seconds on the clock. I'll take a few last questions. Laura, imagine you have to manage expectations with stakeholders who see that these are just informed stakes in the ground, natural commitments. Absolutely. I think one way I like to think about this is you start off with a kind of draft, hey, I'm just getting my own thoughts straight. What do you think? And you can then start to frame it to stakeholders as saying, like, this is my working hypothesis. What do you think? Do you have any comments? And you can then kind of, as it gets more robust, as you've shown it to more people and they've validated it and the evidence base is better for it, you can then position it as more like, no, this is the strategy, this is what we're doing. But yeah, of course, if you've got new information, then we'll change it. So I think just you can frame it from being very notey to more complete. Anyway, thanks very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
And if you can stay on, I have one quick question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I thought Butter was going to kick us out, but I'm happy to stay and chat if you're still there.
Yeah, I would say so. I work mostly on like platform products, like think large, data infrastructure platforms. So when I have a difficulty coming up with the vision sometimes because it just doesn't like add up, right? The usual things I focus on is, I guess, incremental improvements from before and after. I guess like what's your take on that where you don't really have a fancy UI, or maybe I guess you could plug in a process that you could improve, right?
Yeah, and again, like if you work, yeah, if you're working on a really technical product that's not a fancy UI, I think about this from two different ways. So I think the visuals, I'm a really big believer in visuals because things just come alive for people when you've got those visuals. So how can you make a platform product visual? Maybe there's just like a systems diagram that you're using, and it's like, hey, we're going from this kind of spaghetti mess, and then it's going to be like this much more kind of simple, fluid thing in the future. Or it could be more of a storyboard type of thing where you're saying, like, actually, there's not like a really great UI, but we are serving DevOps, and their day looks like this at the moment, and they're getting pager calls, and they're getting, 1,000 Slack messages, and in the future, it's going to look like this, and something completely different is going to happen because behind the scenes, lots of fancy stuff is happening.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. Yeah,
I
it
think I
seems
think
like
there's a few different ways. Yeah.
it seems like the main concept follow a line, right? Like evil to good, bad to good. It just seems like basically create a binary outlook, past and then future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. One other thing is I'm actually on the premium hustle badge. I was wondering if you ever planned on doing kind of these sessions, but more like group oriented. Maybe like even if you didn't have to run it, but it just gives us like practice to do some of these like snap strategies.
Yeah, definitely something we're considering. We're doing a lot more of these events now, and there's quite an active conversation in the Slack channel about which ones we do. I don't know if you're in the Slack, but if not, ping me and I'll send you the link.
Yeah, I'll ping you. Yeah, I didn't even know we had a Slack channel.
And as well as a paid member, you can always set up office hours with me where we get some, half an hour of one-on-one time, and we can talk through these sorts of things as well.
Oh, that's sweet. Okay, thanks for that. And this was a fantastic session. Ed, thank you so much.
Great.
Awesome.
Super. Glad you enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, David. Great. Right. I'm going to close off now. Thanks very much, everyone. Really appreciate you being here, and I will post the recording shortly. Have a great day.